On this short video, I want to discuss a little bit the Sheva Berachot, the 7 blessings we say during both Chuppah, the Jewish wedding, and also later during the meals, when at least one of the two sides, either he or her, never were married before. Then the 7 brachot are said for 7 days. These special celebrations when people usually gather guests, you have to have a minyan in order to say all these brachot, and you have to have at least one person who was not at the wedding or at the previous Sheva Berachot. So each time new people are invited, what's called panim chadashot, new faces. Sephardim require at least 2 such people, but Ashkenazim, for Ashkenazim it suffices that one new person shows up, and then Sheva Berachot are recited for all 7 days. But if both he and her are divorced or widowed, they were married before, then Sheva Berachot is only recited for 1 day. Whatever the case may be, during the wedding and the first meal after the wedding, for sure, the Sheva Berachot are recited, even if both were married before. And I want to discuss a little bit the Sheva Berachot because in this weekly reading we learn about the blessings that the family of Rivka gave her. And from here, our sages saw a kind of hint to the Sheva Berachot, to the 7 blessings. So of course the number 7 is very important, and there are all kinds of allusions, and with regards to Kabbalistic secrets, the Sheva Sfirot, the lower 10 Sfirot, the ways that Hashem rules over the world. Generally they're divided into 10. Of course there are many details, and 10 are divided more, but at least the general split is all into 10. So just like, for instance, in the periodic table, there are altogether about 100 elements, plus or minus, right? I mean, there are new ones discovered all the time, but let's say there are about 100 elements, and everything is made from them, from some kind of combination. So too, in spiritual, according to the Jewish mystics, the teachings of Kabbalah, there are 10 general ways of hanhaga, of ruling, that Hashem uses, and there are mixtures of all kinds, and every kind of hanhaga from Hashem is some kind of a mixture of various sfirot. So the 7 lower sfirot that have to do with actions, the 10 sfirot consist of 3 and 7, 3 higher ones and 7 lower ones. So the Sheva Berachot have to do with sfirot, but not exactly the way one might think. One might assume it's going to be from Chesed to Malchut, but it's not exactly that way. The discussion of Sheva Sfirot with regards to their correspondence to Brachot of newlyweds, to the Sheva Berachot, is in the Zohar, and the correspondence is as follows, that the brocha on the wine is kineged gvura. So it's in opposite order here, first gvura, then chesed, not the usual way we assume. So it's gvura, then chesed, then tiferet, then netzach, then hod, then yesod, and then not malchut but bina. So again, of course, this would require, in order to understand this on a higher level, one would have to learn Kabbalah and for a long time to get the deeper understanding. But I'm just trying to say, in the general sense, we do find that in today's day and age, a lot of times the lectures the rabbis give, they do say something from Kabbalah, from Sfirot, without going into details, even though one might wonder what's the point. Would it make sense for people who, let's say, know the basic math, the arithmetic, to be told from time to time some idea from calculus? They won't understand anything, right? It's completely useless. Well, it turns out that sometimes, even on some level of understanding, it's still worth it. In Kabbalah, sometimes even the most basic, the most rudimentary understanding is also something. It does make sense. In a way, it's like the written Torah, in a certain sense. The written Torah has many levels of understanding. There is a pshat, and there are other levels. So in Kabbalah also, you could say there is a pshat and deeper levels. So we'll talk about something that's closer to the pshat in Kabbalah, if you want to call it that way. So the first blessing, of course, is on the wine. Now the wine, there's a certain thing about the wine. Our sages had an ambivalent attitude towards it. After all, the wine can be used for good or for bad. Too much wine is terrible. Drinking, alcoholic problems, that's horrid. But on the other hand, to say, well, I'll never drink wine at all, In fact, in Islam religion, from what I know, of course I'm not an expert, but they don't allow wine at all. This is not, of course, the Jewish position. We actually use wine for all kinds of mitzvot, but only in very, very limited qualities. So there is not so much a drinking problem among Orthodox Jews. It's very rare. I mean, anything can exist, of course. There are over 1 million people who identify as Orthodox Jews today, maybe a couple of million people in the world, maybe more. I'm not sure exactly what the number is. It could be there are 3 or 4 million Orthodox Jews in the world today, but depending on what you call Orthodox and all kinds of things, questions here. But whatever the case may be, there are certainly some people who have a problem with alcohol. Can't deny that. But in a general sense, it's not very common. Even when I lived in the former Soviet Union, where the Jews were generally religious, but it was known that the Jews don't drink much. As opposed to the local population, Jews were known that they're not really drunkards. It's very rare. But are there exclusions? Of course there are exclusions. So my point is that according to the way we understand Judaism, what we try to practice, on the one hand, wine, a little bit of wine is good, and it's used for various mitzvot. On the other hand, of course, too much wine is terrible, and it can lead to the problem with alcohol. So that's why it has to do with the sphere of Gvura. Gvura is the left side of Hanhaga, that the way Hashem rules over the world through judgment, meaning it can lead to bad things. But on the other hand, it is needed. So wine also, it's the kind of drink that can lead to bad things, but it can also be used for good, to make a person a little bit happier and to put him in the right mood. And that's why Kiddush, Havdalah, and all kinds of other mitzvot are done with wine. And of course the Sheva Berachot start with a brocha on wine. Our sages compare it to a lame man who was sitting and listening to the music, and he wanted to dance, but he can't. He doesn't have the legs to dance. But there was nearby a deaf man. He could not hear the music, but he had the legs. So the lame man told the brought to him the deaf man and gave him some wine. And then he sat on his soldiers, and the deaf man was dancing kind of, because now that he had wine, he was happy and he was dancing. And then the lame man, the man without the legs, was also happy and was participating in the dance. So they compare it to the soul and the body, that the body doesn't understand spiritual, and the soul doesn't have the legs in a sense in this case. So the soul needs the body to be a little bit happier, so it kind of dances too. So drinking the wine makes the body happy, and then the soul also enjoys the spiritual pleasures. Something like this. By the way, it's interesting that in terms of people, the sphere of Gvura is associated with Yitzchak. And of course, Yitzchak also drank wine before blessing his son. We're going to learn that in the next Parsha, in Parsha Toldot. Okay, the next brocha is Keneged the sphere of Chesed, and it's the kindness of Creator. Whatever he does is altruistic. He doesn't need people. He created people to be able to give somebody of his good. And among people, it corresponds to Avraham. So the brocha here is Shehakol bara lichvodo, that Hashem created everything for His glory, not for any altruistic reasons. He did it, everything that was made. Notice, this brocha doesn't really say anything about wedding per se. Until we get to actual brochas on wedding, there are a few general brochas. So first on the wine, like any mitzvah, then the brocha that Hashem created everything for His glory. And Avraham, of course, who was from the sphere of Chesed, associated with that sphere, so he tried to spread Hashem's knowledge and make the whole world accept Him. Okay, the next one is Keneged Tiferet. It says that Hashem created man, Adam. So this brocha and the next brocha, they have some similarities. They end the same way, but there is a great difference. That in a certain sense, they correspond to general creation and specific creation. Right? That the creation of man in general is included both the masculine and the feminine within him. At least there is such a midrash. And then the split of the man into two, a man and a woman, the specific creation of the two. So the woman, the female spiritual root, is related to the last sphirot, Netzach, Hod, Yesod. They all apply to Malchut, the last sphira, which is the feminine sphira. So it's not a surprise that the next bracha, which talks about masculine and feminine creation, that one is Keneged the Netzach. But the more general creation, the Tiferet, is just Yotzer HaAdam, a very short brocha. Hashem created man. In terms of people, the sphere of Tiferet corresponds to Yaakov, who rectified the sin of Adam in a certain sense. He was the continuation of Adam. So you could say that this brocha means created Adam, specifically created Adam, and it's kineged the sphere of Tiferet. And then, as I said in Netzach, it talks about the first couple. By the way, it's interesting, the meaning of the word Netzach can mean, among others, eternity. And we have here in this brocha the specific mention that Hashem made it forever and ever, adei ad. For eternity and eternity, Hashem made this situation that there will be a man and his wife, the situation of couples. Okay, the next brocha kineged the sphere of Hod is talking about in gathering of the exiles. Again, it's not directly related to wedding yet, but in a certain sense, it's known that Zion, Zion, is certain compared in like a collective Jewish soul in a sense, the Jewish mother to whom all her children are brought. A lot of times the prophets compared when Zion was desolate, Zion was Shemama v'Chariva, most of the time of our exile, when very few people lived there and very few Jews lived there. And all of a sudden, all these Jews are gathering together, and the Zion is happy when her children are coming together with her, to her. The sphere of Hod, of course, is also from the left side, just like Gvura, and it corresponds to the times of our exile in terms of the centuries. The 1,000 year, the main part of the worst time of the exile, is kineged. There is a verse like this in Eicha, in Lamentations, Kol Hayom Dava, that all of this time of our exile, she is mourning the Jewish people, this collective soul, the Yerushalayim, is all Dava, is all sick throughout the exile. So Dava is the same letters as Hod. And the Zohar speaks about all this. Then at last two brochas that actually apply directly to the Chatan and Kala, to the bride and groom. One is a shorter one and one is a longer one. And they end similarly. One ends with that Hashem makes happy the groom with the bride, and the other one that Hashem, the first one says Chatan vechala, the groom and the bride, and then the second it says Ima Kala, that he makes happy the groom with the bride. That's the only difference. But the blessing itself, the last one, is the longest one, and it has a lot of various allusions, as I'll explain in a moment. So it's not a surprise that kineged the last two sfirot, the kineged the Yesod is the brocha of Misameh Chatan Vechala. Right? Yesod in physical form, it corresponds, like all the sfirot have projections in the physical world. So, for instance, the arms of the person have to do with sphere of Chesed and Gvura, etc. So Yesod has to do with the genitals, with the organs through which actually children are born. So ideally, when these things are done with holiness and purity, there is nothing dirty about it. On the contrary, it's a lofty experience when the husband and wife unite in physical ways too, and they're able to produce something. The most godly act a person can do throughout life almost is to produce new children, new souls are brought into this world. So in theory, at least, for ideal, the way the Mekubalim looked at it, the way the Jewish mystics looked at it, they looked at it as something very holy. So for them, these organs that generally, of course, in the general society are associated with all kinds of inappropriate things, and then, how should I say it, things that people are ashamed of. But really, in Kabbalah, these things are talked about all the time in a very open form. The sages were not ashamed to talk about and think that one of the sfirot has to do with these organs. So it's not a surprise that the brocha, where it talks about the happiness of the groom and bride together, corresponds to the sphere of Yesod. By the way, the word Yesod itself is something like what supports the whole building, fundamental, something fundamental, yesod binyan, something on which the whole building rests. So Yosef, among people, the sphera corresponds to Yosef. Of course, Yosef was a person who had the greatest temptation. The wife of his master wanted him, and he was able to withstand his temptations, and that's why he is considered the tzaddik. What tzaddik, by the way, also has to do with the sphera, that he was able to not do what she wanted from him. So the last bracha, as I said, is the longest. And by the way, when there is no minyan, or there are no new faces, panim chadashot, then only this bracha is pronounced. And that is, this bracha includes 12 different words that some of them are synonymous with each other. Some of them deal with various words for simcha, happiness. Others talk about the chatan and kala themselves. I'm going to read these words in Hebrew first. It says that Hashem created sason v'simcha, two types of happiness, chatan v'chala, the groom and the bride, gila, rina, ditza v'chedva, another 4 words that all mean happiness. Now there are all kinds of opinions in the books of grammar and Jewish grammar that deal with the differences between all these words. What's the difference between sason and simcha, and how does gila fit into all this? Rina is literally a song, but apparently a happy song. Ditza bichlal is a very rare word. It only appears once in Eov. Some kind of happiness with dancing, apparently. Chedva, also a type of happiness. And then a few more words that also have to do with happiness, but they deal more with the actual closeness of people. And that is ahava, love, ve'achava. It's also kind of similar to love, something where people are together in a brotherhood. Right? It comes from the word ach, brother. Brotherhood, v'shalom, peace, v'reut, and friendship, friendliness. So that's the 4 words that are all synonymous in a certain sense. So we have, therefore, altogether, first 2 words for simcha and sason, and then after the words chatan and kala, 4 more words for simcha, and then 4 words for love and friendship and closeness. So altogether we have 12 words, 10 of which have to do with happiness and closeness. And those correspond to spheres again, which I'm not going to go into right now. But the Zohar talks about all this, and I have an article in English on my site, torah1.com, where I explain this in greater detail and explain also the differences between different types of happiness, according to the Vilna Gaon, according to Malbim, and certain other commentators. And of course it ends with verses from Prophet Yirmiyahu, that let it be soon that we'll hear in Yehuda and Yerushalayim, in Yehuda and Jerusalem, Judah and Jerusalem, we'll hear the voices of happiness, the voices of groom and bride, and it ends, as I said, similar to the previous brocha, but even more so, Hatan imakala. And like I said, according to the Zohar, it seems that this is not, as one might think, kineged the sphere of Malchut, as you might expect, but actually kineged Bina. I mean, in a sense, they're related, of course, and both have to do with letters Hey in the divine name. In the divine name, generally, it's considered that the first letter Yud is kineged Chochma, the second is Bina, Hey, then Vav corresponds to the next 6 sfirot, which we just discussed, and then the last Hey again is Malchut. So the last Hey and the first Hey are Bina and Malchut. These are the feminine sfirot, which have to do with each other, but I cannot go into greater detail on all of this. So I understand that this video came out, in a sense, with more questions than answers. There's a lot to be learned in order to understand it better. But as I said, this is something that goes beyond the short lesson. But I think that there's at least some understanding, hopefully, I was able to give through this short video. And if you like this video, please press like.